So it's a very warm welcome this afternoon to the show to Mr. Ian Braid. Ian, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Despite a cold and rainy day in Sussex, I'm good.
That was going to be my first question. I would have anticipated that you would be having a cold and rainy day in Sussex today. So maybe for all the listeners today, you can tell us when was the last day you saw the sunshine there?
You are a cheeky man. It was yesterday.
It was yesterday. Okay. Very good. Now, look, you and I are going to talk about something we're both very passionate about today, which is mental health in sport. You're a man in the UK that's had a lot of experience with this. In fact, you've gone as far as setting up your own organisation, Duty of Care and Action, and we're going to hear about that today. But I want you to, first of all, start off by telling our listeners what made you set up this organisation? What was the emphasis and reason behind it?
I hope your listeners are strapped in for the ride here, but we'll see how we go. I had a huge privilege between 2012 and 2017 when I was the chief executive of an organisation called the British Athletes Commission. And the British Athletes Commission is a players' association in this country, like the Rugby Players Association or the professional footballers, the professional cricketers, blah, blah, blah. The BAC was an association for the world-class funded athletes in 40 Olympic and Paralympic sports, anything from archery through to wheelchair rugby. I still think I could be a contender despite my age, but I never was a high performance athlete. So I lived it vicariously for 5 years. When I started London, it was 2012, and the London Games just put a fantastic feel-good factor in this country for a month. And I discovered when I took my coat off and got into the BAC that their organisation was in what the phrase used in England is in the UK special measures. It was under forensic external examination because of the lack of return on public investment, government money. So the members were brilliant. The organisation was bust. And the system said, we're brilliant. We win lots of medals. But the athletes didn't have a voice in that collective expression of goodwill and success. And I had to give them it. And it was very challenging. I won't give you a blow by blow, but my first interest in mental health in sport was probably in 2014 when I had to help in different ways 3 athletes in 3 different sports who had attempted to take their own life. So, going back to 2011, I was, like a lot of people, a window licker and just looking at everything on the telly and thinking, this is brilliant. But it was beginning to come home to me, the cost, and not just in pounds millions, but human cost. Serendipity, I do like sliding doors and serendipity. In 2014, I was joined on a board of a charity I'm a trustee of by Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, who is one of our most decorated Paralympians, sits in the House of Lords crossbench, and is just, on every level, a brilliant woman. And Tanni helped me understand what I needed to do in the BAC. And in 2015, it's a bit like your LinkedIn request. I clicked yes. I got a text message from the Baroness.
Never regretted it since.
Well, that's not what my lawyer's advising me to say. But anyway, I get a text message from Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson. Can you speak? Well, if a member of the House of Lords, says, "Can you speak?" You've only got two responses: when and how loud, right? So she says, "I've just been to see the Minister of Sport, who at the time was a woman called Tracy Crouch MP. She wants me to do a review of duty of care in sport, and so I've talked to my husband about it, and he thinks it's a good idea. So I'm ringing you." "Oh yeah. Well, if you don't help me do it, I'm not doing it." "Ah, no pressure then, Baroness." But I knew it could change the political landscape for the members of the BAC. Huge privilege again to be able to do that on behalf of the membership. And that went into 2016. 2016, a lot of stuff went on in sport in this country, my sports, that I had members in. And everybody was packed off to Rio, other than me. There was no need for me to go, and I certainly didn't have the qualifying times. So the Team GB, Paralympics GB, came back with another bucket full of medals, and everybody's going, "Wow, I told you we were brilliant. We just won another shed load." But then a lot of athletes, very brave, very trusting of me, came to the BAC and started to talk about cultures in those sports. And it was harrowing to listen to. Some of it was, "Well, from what you've told me, I think you should go to the police." "I'm not going to the police, Ian." "Why not?" "Well, the coach will find out it's me. He knows where I live, and he'll hurt me." "Well, I'll go to the CEO of the NGB then, National Governing Body." "Don't need to do that either." So it got very mucky and very dirty at times, because I wasn't having the narrative. I valued the people, my members. The system valued the medals. So that only ended up in one way, and that's I fell over. When I eventually saw a psychotherapist, she said, "Ian, you've had 5 years of vicarious trauma. It's no wonder you're poorly." So I was signed off work, went back to work to get out because I knew I couldn't do it anymore, couldn't put my family through it, et cetera, et cetera. And I talked to other CEOs, other performance directors, other coaches in this time when I was negotiating my exit. "Ian, I know 6 people like you. Ian, I'm on 8 pints a night. Ian, I'm on 250 milligrams of something." And I thought, who's looking after the people looking after the people? If you end up in a chronically depressed state, you feel very isolated and very lonely and very vulnerable, and particularly if you've had your sense of purpose removed, which I had. But this sort of feedback I was getting, I was like, there's something still to be done here. So I decided that I would set up a consultancy, Docia Sport, as you say, duty of care in action. Docia, from the ancient Greek, meaning good reputation. Put that in your pipe.
Yep.
I found that out afterwards, right? But don't let your listeners let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I set that up in 2017. Sport has a duty of care to the people that are involved in it. If sport takes care of itself, it can give better care in its responsibility to broader society, which all is very highfalutin and grandiose, but something needs to be done. And I thought, I'm not sitting on my hands waiting for somebody else to have a go at it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so 3 hours ago, you asked me a question, didn't you?
Yeah. No, you've done well to keep it that short.
You know me too well, so it would seem.
Well, I wanted to ask on the back of that, because you've been in the industry for some time. Have you seen a lot of changes in sport in relation to mental health? And if you have, what direction are those changes going in?
It's another 3-day answer. The look, I think it's moving slowly. It's not moving uniformly across all sports, and it's not moving uniformly inside sports. So there, myself and others have highlighted the vulnerability of elite high performance athletes, and things have been addressed. A lot of it, Tanny's report, the duty of care report, published 2017, and available from all good bookshops. Its prime recommendation was there should have been an independent ombudsman. There needs to be more transparency about what goes on in sport. So, I have a number of mantras in my locker. One of them is sport shouldn't mark its own homework. So I can't give you the definitive 100% sure answer because it's opaque. The more is being done for high performance athletes, but what about athletes and their parents who are fighting their way up the talent pathway to get to that stage of recognition? And what happens if they don't make it and are told they're not good enough, or they're forced to leave because of career-ending injury or whatever? And that's just athletes, right? This thing about who's looking after the people focuses my attention on coaches, and a lot of mental health awareness given to coaches is about mental health awareness for their athletes. But where's the duty to care to the coaches, and how do we help the coaches apply duty of care to themselves? Officials in sport, you only have to watch any program of Match of the Day and see Jurgen Klopp or Harry Kane or whoever in the face of officials challenging big decisions. There was a Premiership title contender last night between Arsenal and Manchester City. It was feral almost at times. And that cascades down to the under six on Whiteman's Green in Haywards Heath because they see the top guys doing it, giving the pros a hard time. There was an article I think I sent to yourself the other day on the BBC website about young girls aged 16 who have refereed for 3 years and are just getting a load of abuse. Well, they're volunteering. What the hell are they doing that for? They must ask themselves when they look themselves in the mirror, right? So there's loads to be done. There's some being done, right? And there is good work, and there are good people practicing that good work. But more needs to be done.
How important is collaboration in this process? Because we have a huge industry, the sports industry, and we have many sports that have gone off the rails. Can highlight gymnastics as one. We know that there's a lot of issues within the world of rugby where, because of the demographics that have played the game over many, many decades, they're seen as tough, hard men who are not able to emotionally come out and talk about their concerns. And we've lost some great rugby players over the year to mental health issues. So how important, I'm wondering, is the art of collaboration, both at a local, national and international level, to take on this mental health issue?
Very. That's the other end of the spectrum. No, look, They, I think, my experience, I can only speak UK, I can't speak internationally. But my experience is that sport operates in stovepipes. And there is, it's taken a long time in this country, for instance, to get talent ID and transfer. So somebody who was, let me think of an example. Our most decorated Paralympian, Sarah Story, she started off as a swimmer. She's now hugely decorated as a cyclist. That sort of talent transfer. We're talking knowledge transfer here, aren't we? Clearly.
Yep.
Knowledge transfer and support. Because it's not just, one of the things that I've done in my job, in my consultancy, is I became a mental health first aid instructor, and I then have created mental health first aiders in different groups of sport. Now that to me is great, but it only goes, so it's a bit like, well, how seriously do you take mental health? Well, we've got 42 mental health first aiders. Yeah, and what? Now what? What is there that's about the sustainable, that is about minimizing the risk of mental illness? What is there about looking after the people, the mental health first aiders? So, there's loads to be done still, Mark. And I think better together. I always think better together. And can I tell you about the Isle of Man? It's a brilliant thing, right? I've got some Manx in my blood, right? And for anybody who doesn't know where the Isle of Man is, it's in the middle of the Irish Sea, in between England and the Republic of Ireland in north. It has a talent pathway. It has a talent pathway that's produced many athletes. Many will know of Mark Cavendish, the cyclist, Manxman. So I got asked if I would write I have Manx in my blood, which is one of the reasons why I got involved in this. Would I write a mental health strategy for the talent pathway on the Isle of Man? So I can write you a strategy, but it'll end up covered in dust in the clouds. Nobody will, well, we've got a mental health strategy. Well, so what? How's it enacted? What we did in the end, and then we did this in the middle of COVID, right? So I was doing this from Sussex, England. But I said, well, this mental health strategy, let's have a blank sheet of paper in the middle of a table, and we'll work out how many chairs we need round it to help create it. But we did. And they were all people from the island, coaches, athletes, ex-athletes, sports science, etc., etc. And there you got collaboration, and there you got variety of insights at the same time. And lo and behold, you get a strategy that has been adopted and implemented, and better, changed, because people own it.
So that leads me on to asking you then, where does the buck really stop with doing more in sport for mental health? Is it government? Is it federations, national bodies of sports? Is it down to team level, coaching level, club level? Where does the buck really stop?
Well, I think it's unfair to pinpoint. You just asked me about the value of collaboration, etc., right? So I don't think it's fair to pin the responsibility on one organization. It is for want of a phrase, global cultural issue in which there are many stakeholders that should be brought together. I mean, it could be, for instance, you might say that the government should bring people together and bang heads together and say, unless you sort this out, then the funding goes, because money talks. But you'll always have people who want to be footballers. You'll always have people who want to be a gymnast and so on and so forth. And they go into that, and I mean this in the right way, ignorant of what the pressures and the consequences of those things are. So there's a huge need for improved. The White Review, which was published in last year into the environment in gymnastics as a result of athlete Z and Simone Biles, etc., etc. Right? There was a quote from a parent who said, "We were too frightened to complain about the rubbish coffee in the cafeteria because we didn't want to endanger our daughter's gymnastics career." Wrong culture, right? If they can't talk about the coffee, how can they talk about, I think my daughter's a bit flaky today, and can we do something else? Can there be a different coach, different coaching style, whatever? So we've all got a piece of the book, I think.
Money talks, though. So surely, we look at sport and we see the top teams and the top organizations making a lot of money. And then we go down to grassroots level, and you talk to anybody in the grassroots level and they'll say, well, it's all about resources and we don't have adequate funding to be able to provide the resources to address these issues at club level, at grassroots club level. So how can we inspire more money to be spent in the right direction? Is it a case where we can actually hold sponsors responsible and get these big global sporting sponsors to step up and allocate some of the money they put into it to doing good in mental health? Is that a solution?
I don't see it as any more than a long-term possibility with a lot of goodwill and some critical mass behind it. Our natural inclination is to focus to elite sport, isn't it? But certainly in this country, the provision of sport is moving away from just sport, from sport's sake, into the health agenda. And Sport England, which is the sports council, funnily enough, for England, there are similar in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. But Sport England has a new strategy uniting the movement. And again, if you get the Department of Culture and Media and Sport and the Department of Health and the Department of Education and perhaps the criminal justice system to all come together as well, and good luck with that, right? Because that might not happen in my lifetime. But you get all these people together and look at a more impactful, sustainable way of distributing funding. And if that is visible, then perhaps, rather than the negative side of penalizing sponsors, the positive side is that more sponsors would want to be associated with it.
Yeah. So for any parents watching this podcast today who have got a young kid who's just starting off on their sports journey, what piece of advice would you give them to make sure that that journey is not shrouded in darkness with mental health issues?
I think they should go in with their eyes open. I think they should do a lot of due diligence. There is work coming in the UK. There's an organisation called MCIMSPA, which is the Chartered Institute for Members in Sport and Physical Activity. It's about small p, the professionalisation of the work, and therefore having minimum standards of competence, etc., etc. People should do some research and find out, what the history is in the club or whatever it is they're going to go to, and understand about who the coaches are, what they're, they may well have a 32-page safeguarding policy on a website, but what are they doing to enact that and bring it to life? There shouldn't be we sort of end up painting a very negative view of sport and activity, but it's brilliant and it's so good for any individual. As a family man, my view was always with my two kids. sport and exercise is going to be in your life. How can I do that? What's my parental responsibility to make that as the chances of their success as long as possible, as good as possible? And generally speaking, I think I've succeeded. But it's, don't be afraid to ask questions.
As a result of that, we'll get everybody to write to you to ask you for the template or the manual that you've created for your kids that you can send out to anyone around the world. Yeah.
Don't tell anybody, but you make it up as you go along.
So what do you think? Do you think that we're on the same trajectory as cycling is with doping, and we're never going to get rid of mental health issues in sport, and we've got to live with a percentage of those athletes, coaches, officials, and referees that are always going to be impacted?
I have to say no, and I have to be positive. I once spoke on a mental health platform at a conference on mental health in sport, not a red card. And I was asked to do a piece to camera at the end of it, right? For the social and all that. This lady says to me, "Well, why do you do what you do?" And I said, "Well, to me, it feels like I'm a tight head prop in a rugby scrum. So I'm bound down. I can't see anything. It's dark and it's smelly, and I'm pushing against the opposite scrum, which happens to be the system, and it's not moving. But because it's rugby union, the scrum collapses. So get myself up, dust myself down. As I'm dusting myself down, I have a look around and I think, no, hang on a minute. Playing on this pitch and in the same direction as me, fighting for change. I've got Tanny Gray-Thompson at scrum half. I've got the BBC sports correspondent, Dan Rowan, on the wing. I've got the brilliant Kath Bishop, Olympian and cultural challenger and thinker, outside centre. If I look beyond the bench, there's an academy now, because there's lots of people, some of whom I've had the pleasure of talking to in universities about duty of care in sport in its broadest terms. So when I get hooked, there's some good guys coming on as well. So I tell you what, I'm going to bind up in this scrum and have another go, because we're going to have a go. We're going to have a go at this, and there will be change. And that's what I think. And it's back to your answer about collaboration. These people are disparate. They're individuals or organisations, and because they're not a collective entity, it's harder to sort of throw stones at. We come together from time to time and remind ourselves about why we do what we do, and there'll be bloody change, Mark.
Terrific. So my last question today then is, if somebody's watching this podcast, I hope somebody is. I hope it's just not you and me talking to each other.
Well, I've heard all this before, mate.
If someone's watching this today and they are in the sports industry, whether they be an athlete, a coach, an official, a parent of a young child that's having issues, and they've got some distress in their life because of that sport, what's your advice to them? What should they do? What's their first step?
It's a great question. Well, if they're a coach, let's start with them. If they're a coach, then there is an organisation in UK coaching where Here for the Coach says their strapline. Try them. If you are an athlete, then you've got to try your professional associations. If you're a parent, you've got to perhaps collaborate with other parents, and you've got to start by at least approaching the national governing bodies, if that's the overarching umbrella organisation, and have when I fell over with my mental health, I felt very isolated and lonely. Part of my recovery and risk prevention, if you will, was that I established a personal board. The articles of association of the personal board are, you will have Ian Braid's back. There are humans in my personal board, and my senior non-executive director, my senior Ned, is a dog called Fred. But don't do it. You will feel isolated and you will feel lonely. You don't have to be. You have to reach out. And finish on an ultimate negative. If you are really, really, really worried, then you've got to go to the police.
Yep.
Well, listen, finish on a positive.
Yeah, I'm going to finish on a positive because I want to say on behalf of, I've only recently met you, and I know full well that you're a person that is dedicating everything you've got and have been for many years to support those within the sports industry. So there are many shining lights for people out there, and if you are in a dark place right now, you don't need to be, because there are lots of positive solutions which are run by individuals, run by organizations, and I'm going to put a link to a couple of those in the description of this podcast today, including Ian's organization, so you can check out more details on his website and what he's involved in. So if you are in the UK and you need a helping hand, then there's no better guidance perhaps than this man and his dog Fred to help you through that process. So yeah, I think the positive is there is being a lot done, and you and I are coming together physically soon, because I'm coming over to the UK to do a silly run from Land's End to John O'Groats, and the whole purpose behind that is to shine a light on the good things that are happening within UK sport to help all of those people across the industry that are struggling, and highlight some of those organizations that are doing good things. So I'm really excited about that, because you are an ambassador to that. For you say the UK sport, but now you're going to become a global superstar after appearing on this show. And we need more Ian Braids in this world. That's what we need. So thank you for giving me your time today and talking about mental health in sport. It's been a good chat.
Been my pleasure, Mark. Take care.
And we'll see you all again soon. And as I said, everybody, check out Ian's website, and you can find out more about Ian's organisation. Until next time, it's over and out from here, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for joining us.